Welcome to latest News Blaster. In one of the most heated moments to shake the American pulpit in years, Bishop T.D. Jakes, a man who has built his reputation on preaching faith, unity and empowerment, has directly called out Pastor Greg Locke for what he sees as a dangerous blending of politics and preaching, telling him in no uncertain terms that the pulpit is meant for the gospel, not for partisan agendas. And this explosive rebuke has now ignited an uproar across congregations, social media, and news outlets, with millions of Christians weighing in on the shocking confrontation. According to insiders close to the scene, Jakes had grown increasingly frustrated as Locke's fiery sermons began sounding less like messages of salvation and more like campaign rallies, with Locke allegedly using his church platform to endorse candidates, push political conspiracies, and stir anger rather than healing. Jakes, who has faced his own share of controversies, but has largely avoided being branded as a political preacher, reportedly decided that enough was enough. And in a powerful sermon, he thundered against those who, in his words, pollute the holy altar with earthly battles, sending shockwaves through both the megachurch world and online Christian communities. Clips of Jakes's words have gone viral, with some praising him as a fearless prophet standing for truth and others accusing him of hypocrisy, pointing out his past political associations. But what cannot be denied is that this clash between two of the most talked about preachers in America has exposed a deep divide in the modern church, whether pastors should strictly stick to the Bible or whether they can use their influence to shape culture and politics. Observers note that Locke, who has become infamous for his controversial rants and aggressive style, is not backing down either, and early reports suggest he is preparing a fiery response to Jakes's rebuke, which could turn this into one of the biggest pastor versus pastor showdowns in recent memory. Meanwhile, congregants on both sides are torn, some cheering Jakes for being bold enough to say what many pastors are afraid to, while others stand firmly behind Locke, arguing that politics and religion cannot be separated in today's world. The story has spiraled so far beyond the pulpit that secular media is now covering it, portraying it as a symbol of how America's religious leaders are battling not just over souls, but over power, influence, and cultural direction. For many Christians watching, the question now is whether Jakes' warning will inspire other pastors to rethink their words and return to preaching the gospel free from political entanglements, or whether Locke's defiance will embolden a new generation of preachers who see the pulpit as a stage for political warfare. Either way, this explosive moment marks a turning point, and the ripple effects are just beginning to spread. And as the controversy deepened, reports began to emerge that behind the scenes, influential church leaders were scrambling to take sides in what is quickly being dubbed the Jakes versus Locke showdown, with some calling it a much-needed cleansing moment for the church, while others worry it will only divide Christians further at a time when faith communities are already fractured. Sources close to the Potter's House in Dallas, where Bishop Jakes leads tens of thousands, revealed that his inner circle felt compelled to address Locke's increasingly political rants, because many young believers were beginning to equate Christianity itself with partisanship, something Jakes views as a dangerous distortion of the gospel message. His fiery words, "Stop turning the church into politics," are now being dissected in podcasts, blogs, and news articles, sparking fierce debates about what exactly the role of the pastor is supposed to be. Should pastors remain neutral shepherds, guiding their flocks towards spiritual truth without entangling themselves in elections and parties? Or should they embrace activism, leveraging their influence to change laws and policies they believe conflict with biblical principles? Greg Locke, never one to shy away from confrontation, has already doubled down, posting cryptic social media messages that seem to mock Jakes, hinting that he will not apologize for telling the truth and that those who oppose him are simply afraid of real, raw preaching. His loyal base of followers, many of whom see him as a rare voice willing to stand against what they view as corruption in politics and weakness in the church, are flooding comment sections with messages of support, promising to stand with Locke no matter what. Meanwhile, critics point out that Locke's style often thrives on outrage, and this new feud only fuels his notoriety, giving him the spotlight he craves. The media frenzy has even drawn attention from non-religious audiences who are fascinated by the spectacle of two megachurch giants clashing in such a public and dramatic way, and mainstream outlets are framing it as symbolic of the broader culture wars shaping America. Behind the headlines, however, lies a deeper question that resonates with millions. Has the church lost its focus? Jakes' warning is being taken as more than just a rebuke of one pastor. To many, it is a prophetic cry that the church must reclaim its purpose before it becomes indistinguishable from politics and ideology. Supporters of Jakes are saying that this could be his most courageous stand yet, while Locke's defenders counter that silencing political truth from the pulpit is itself cowardice. The tension is electric, with pastors across the nation nervously watching to see who will come out on top. Will Jakes's call for purity and separation of church and state resonate louder? Or will Locke's unapologetic boldness galvanize those who believe the church should be at the forefront of political battles? What makes this moment even more dramatic is that both men are not just preachers, they are influencers with global reach. Their sermons streamed by millions, their words shaping not only congregations but entire communities of believers. Already, clips of Jakes's sermon have been remixed into TikToks, reaction videos and commentary channels, with young Christians passionately debating whether their faith leaders have betrayed their calling or are bravely leading the charge. Locke himself is reportedly preparing a historic sermon that he promises will address the backlash head-on, and insiders suggest it may include direct shots back at Jakes, setting the stage for an even more explosive clash. Social media platforms are buzzing with hashtags like #JakesVsLocke, #KeepPoliticsOut, and #BoldPreaching, as the world waits to see how this battle of words escalates. What makes the unfolding feud even more gripping is the way ordinary churchgoers are reacting, because while leaders argue theology and pastors debate the boundaries of politics in the pulpit, the average believer sitting in the pew is left to wrestle with what this means for their faith, and many have confessed online that they feel torn between admiration for Jakes' boldness and sympathy for Locke's uncompromising stance, which has left countless Christians wondering if they should stay loyal to their current pastor or re-evaluate who is truly speaking for God in this moment. Families are being divided, small groups are engaging in heated arguments, and even prayer meetings have turned into forums for debate as people bring up the Jakes versus Locke war instead of focusing on devotion, a sign that this controversy is not only about two pastors but about the very soul of the modern church. Bishop Jakes' supporters argue that his words are a call back to basics, reminding the church that the message of Jesus is about salvation, hope and spiritual transformation, not partisan bickering. But Locke's fans argue that silence in the face of moral corruption is itself a betrayal of the gospel, saying that if pastors don't speak up, evil will continue unchecked. The energy around this fight has reached such a boiling point that even secular political commentators are chiming in, some cheering Jakes for challenging what they call Christian nationalism, while others champion Locke as a warrior unafraid to mix religion with politics. Within church leadership circles, a quiet panic is spreading, because if this conflict escalates further, it could inspire other preachers to take sides, splitting denominations, damaging alliances, and making cooperation among ministries nearly impossible. Sources claim that prominent evangelical voices are privately urging both Jakes and Locke to tone down the rhetoric before it spirals completely out of control. But given Locke's fiery personality and Jakes' unwillingness to appear weak, most insiders predict this showdown will only intensify. And as anticipation builds for Locke's promised response sermon, speculation is swirling over whether he will merely defend himself or launch an all-out verbal attack on Jakes, which would mark a historic moment of open warfare between two of the most influential pulpits in America. Already, YouTube preachers, podcasters and reaction channels are treating this like the heavyweight fight of the decade, analyzing body language, dissecting quotes, and predicting which side will emerge victorious, while ordinary viewers tune in not just for spiritual insight but for entertainment value, proof that this drama has become more than a church issue, it's a cultural spectacle. In many ways, Jakes' thunderous declaration, "Stop turning the church into politics," has ignited a firestorm that no one can easily put out, and whether it ends in reconciliation, destruction, or transformation, it is clear that the world will not forget this clash anytime soon. In the end, what began as a single fiery declaration from Bishop T.D. Jakes, "Stop turning the church into politics," has evolved into one of the most sensational and unforgettable feuds in recent memory, a clash that has not only exposed the sharp differences between two of America's most controversial pastors, but has also forced millions of Christians worldwide to confront what they truly believe about the role of faith in society. And as this drama continues to echo across pulpits, podcasts and platforms, the church finds itself standing at a crossroads, with one path calling for a return to pure gospel preaching untouched by the divisive rhetoric of politics, and the other demanding bold activism where pastors act as culture warriors willing to fight for what they see as biblical values in the political arena. The stakes are high, because this isn't just about Greg Locke's defiance or TD Jakes' rebuke. It's about the identity of the modern church, the future of its credibility, and the way it will be remembered in history. If pastors everywhere choose to follow Jakes' warning, we could see a renewed focus on unity, salvation, and spiritual healing that transcends political boundaries, potentially ushering in revival for a weary generation hungry for truth untainted by agendas. But if Locke's unapologetic boldness wins the day, the church could very well transform into a political battlefield where sermons sound like campaign speeches and faith is measured by party loyalty rather than biblical conviction, a reality that both excites some and terrifies others. What cannot be denied is that this feud has captured the imagination of the world, clips replayed millions of times, hashtags trending, and heated debates raging in homes, churches, and coffee shops alike, proof that people are desperate for clarity in an age of confusion. Perhaps, in the bigger picture, that is why this confrontation matters so much, because it reveals that the church is not immune to the same struggles tearing society apart. And if leaders like Jakes and Locke cannot find common ground, then the sheep they shepherd will continue to be scattered by division. Yet in all the chaos, there is a strange sense of opportunity, because conflict, as painful as it may be, also forces reflection, and maybe, just maybe, this battle will awaken a generation to rethink what it truly means to follow Christ, to preach with power, and to lead without compromise. Whether you stand with Bishop T.D. Jakes, applauding his courage to defend the sacredness of the pulpit, or you stand with Pastor Greg Locke, admiring his fearless willingness to speak truth no matter the cost, one thing is certain: this showdown has forever changed the conversation, and history will remember this as the moment the mask was ripped off, the lines were drawn, and the future of American Christianity was thrust into the spotlight.